Imagine, if you will, a world very, very similar to ours. In fact, you might mistake it for our world itself. The only difference being monsters are real. Unlike the world of darkness, however, these monsters don't bother to hide from humanity. Why would they need to? After all, no human wants to acknowledge that vampires stalk them in the night, that demons are real, and that the only thing protecting us from them are wizards. The next game I'm going to be talking about is the Dresden Files role-playing game from Evil Hat Productions. Before we go over the game itself, I would like to take a bit to talk about the Dresden Files. The Dresden Files is a series of novels by Jim Butcher following the adventures of a wizard private eye, Harry Dresden. I can't recommend the series enough. It's fantastic. As I said, it takes place in our modern world. It is urban fantasy, and it's really fun. It's a ride. It's one of my favorite series of all time, honestly. And oddly enough, my introduction to the series did not come from the novels itself, but from the role-playing game. I used to hang out at a gaming store. We used to joke that I was an unpaid intern because I would just hang out there during my free time. I would organize magic cards, things like that, and just hang out with the guys who owned it. And they started playing the Dresden Files role-playing game after the store closed. And I had no idea what the Dresden Files was. They kind of explained it to me. I still didn't get it. I didn't play at first, but I watched them. And I had fun. And eventually, the game master invited me to play the part of a demon in the heads of one of the characters. And after that, I moved away. The store eventually closed down. But once I moved, I decided to pick up Stormfront, the first book in the Dresden Files, and I was hooked. And it was shortly after that that I decided I needed the role-playing game for myself. So this is the first volume of the Dresden Files role-playing game. This is all you need, the first one. Evil Hat Productions is the company that produces Fate, and in fact, the Dresden Files is powered by Fate. What does that mean? Well, instead of having classic statistics, your character sheets are full of what are called aspects, something fundamental to your character. Whenever something happens relevant to those aspects, you might be able to use them to give you advantages, and your game master might be able to use them to give you disadvantages. There's a series of, well, it's a very complicated system, all things considered, especially coming in from traditional games like D&D, but it's very rewarding. You have what are called fate chips, and you can use those to influence the game. And instead of classic dice, you use what are called fate dice. They were originally called fudge dice. And it's a 6-sided die with 2 pluses, 2 minuses, and 2 blanks. You roll them, and you add the totals together, pluses being 1, minuses being -1, and blanks being 0, to a flat bonus from your character sheet, one of your skills. So why people like Fate, I think, is that it's a very generic system, and those are always really nice. I personally do not care for the Fate system very much. I strongly prefer games with things like levels. But the current edition of Fate is a very small book, and you do not need this to run the Dresden Files, by the way. This is its own thing. In the Dresden Files, it's different from basic Fate in that you get what are called templates for your character. Think of a template as kind of a race and class combined into one. And it tells you what kind of special abilities your characters have. And that is very different than regular Fate, where it gives you basically a blank slate. Like I said, it's a generic system. The Dresden Files RPG obviously takes place within the universe of the Dresden Files. And it's a blast. I do not care for Fate much, but I really like this game. So over the next few weeks, we're going to be going over the Dresden Files role-playing game, some of the mechanics therein, and I will be talking about the 3 books that are in the series. Your Story, which is the core rulebook, Our World, which is basically a really big list of enemies, and the 3rd book is called The Paranet Papers, which is my favorite. And with that, have a fantastic evening.